Today, we're looking at a blue ink by Herbin Bleu Azur. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, there's timestamps down below so that you can skip around to the parts you're most interested in, or if you watch the whole thing, I'd appreciate you. You can follow me on Instagram, and if you're new here and like fountain pen inks as much as I do, I would invite you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put it into this Nimbicine Singularity with a fine nib to take my notes for this video, and I wrote with it for a day. This first writing sample is done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper in order to have some kind of standardization to look at. There's additional writing samples later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, and I'm glad I got it as a sample. To keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. First, let's look at how light this is. Sorry. No bleed, no ghost. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is even lighter. I'm going to try and move really fast with this because I was so unhappy with this ink. The extra fine is even lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 7 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some shading spots. At least in the shading spots, you can actually read it a little bit. 8 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show some color variation. Oh, it's so light. It's there, but it's just so light. It's gross. Tomoe River. No bleeding, no ghosting, because this is practically a transparent ink. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, spots of shading that occur, 10 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, spots of shading that occur, 13 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows some color variation. I don't even know if this writing is going to show up on camera. We do get some color variation in the writing. Rhodia, no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is slightly lighter than the stub. I know, how is it even possible to be lighter? But it is. No feather spread, halo sheen, no real shading, 8 seconds to dry. Medium is slightly darker than the extra fine, about the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer spots of shading, peppering of darker letters, which those darker letters are easier to read. 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows no color variation. We got none. Scrubby of the medium shows some, and sure, I guess there's some. It's just so light. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And this runs from the water a lot, and it all gathers at the top. You can see just how light this ink actually is. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water, and if I didn't mark the filter paper, you wouldn't be able to tell which is which. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. Now, I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, if you really wanted to use this taking notes, I guess you could, although it does get a little lighter even. Maybe the yellow makes it kind of easier to see. I wouldn't use it. Water is completely removing this from the paper. That's only 30 seconds. I'm surprised as much of it is there as there is. Pen flush does a little bit more than the water does. It shows a lot of the white of the paper through it, but I didn't need pen flush. I only used water. Now, 1/3 bleach solution completely obliterated it, as you would expect. I test viscosity or flow by using a tilt test that I've linked in this video. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Herbin Bleu Azur has a viscosity of 1.37, making this a very wet ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples. Now, for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds.
Herbin
Bleu Azur has an average dry time of 9 seconds, making this a faster drying ink. Instead of finding inks that look like J. Herbin's Bleu Azur, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I needed a red, and I chose Diamine's Peach Haze. The second writing sample is done on yellow Rhodia and white lines paper. Here we're looking at yellow Rhodia paper. Not that you would think to use this in a professional environment with it being so light, but just to be able to see how that very light blue becomes a very light green. Yep, yellow and blue makes green. Now I didn't use as many papers here because this was not going well. White lines. No bleeding, no ghosting. I'd be surprised if it could. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 2 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, not as dark as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 3 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine and the medium do show some color variation far left to far right, although we really don't get it in the writing, and that is all that I have for the writing sample. So what do I think of J. Herbin's Bleu Azur? This ink for me is almost always too light to comfortably read. I didn't enjoy using it, and I find that I have to stop and really concentrate on the words on the page to be able to read back to myself what I have written. I think reading somebody else's writing in this might be like deciphering a code. So what nib and pen will give the best writing experience with this ink? I think more than the nib, you need to make sure that you have a super wet pen in order to put enough ink down on the page to make sure that you can comfortably read it. I do new ink reviews every single day, so if you're new here, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.